The entire team at Emsolation want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We want to recognise that we are recording and telling our stories on the stolen land of our country's first storytellers. We wish to pay our respects to all Wurundjeri elders and ancestors, and to extend that respect to any First Nations peoples who listen to Emsolation. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples' continued connection to the land and waters of this country, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. Always was, always will be.
You're in Emsolation.
Well, hi there and welcome to Emsolation. My name is Em Russiano. I'm a writer, a singer, a stand-up comedian, a maximalist power queen, a neurodivergent magic brain and a podcaster. And this week, you're getting a very special edition of Emsolation. Now, if you are an extra subscriber, you'll have already heard what's coming, but maybe you'll want to listen again. Or maybe you'd like to head to YouTube and watch our YouTube-only edition of Emsolation this week. Do whatever you want. Don't let me tell you what to do. But if you are not a subscriber, you won't have heard this. Benjamin Wasley, my executive producer, went behind my back and spoke to the creatives behind my show, Outgrown. Earlier in the year, I toured a stand-up show called Outgrown, which was all about figuring out that the system is actually what's at fault and not you. And that kind of applies to anybody. As we're finding out, the patriarchy doesn't service anybody, not even men anymore. And it did pretty well. I spoke about ADHD and autism and perimenopause and menopause and marriage and parenting into this whole kind of, there was a dragon puppet. But it wasn't just me who made the show. So Ben very kindly put together some interviews with the people that worked on the show with me. I do have the final performance of Outgrown coming up on December the 7th at Margaret Court Arena. I would dearly love to fill it. We've made the tickets super affordable because it was really important to me that it was accessible to everybody. You can come on your own. I've worked so hard on this show. It's the last time I'll ever be performing it, and I would love to send it out with a huge witchy tinged bash at Margaret Court Arena. So if you're on the fence about it or you're not sure, take this as your sign or have a listen to all the love and care that went into making this huge extravaganza that I've put on. Coming up today, you're going to be hearing from my director, Anna Piper-Scott, and my right hand, left hand, right leg, left hand woman, Lucy Gransbury. It was really hard for me to listen to these, I'll be honest with you. I'm very comfortable with the criticism, but when people say kind things about me, it makes me very uncomfortable. But it was really great for me to hear the insight as well. This is great for anyone who's a creative, who wonders what goes into shows, or just people who are Mrs. Mangles and like to have a little sticky beat behind the curtain. So please enjoy this beautiful thing that Ben Wasley put together for me. Thank you for doing it.
Pleasure, lovely.
First up, we're going to be hearing from Anna Piper-Scott.
Yes.
And then you'll be hearing from the wonderful Lucy Gransbury. As I said, on YouTube, you can check out a brand new episode. We've made a video only. For those of you wondering what happens at our extra subscription service, we thought, we'll give you a little sneaky peek on YouTube this week. If you are an extra subscriber, don't worry. We're just doing it to whore ourselves, okay, babes? We're just letting people know what they're missing out on. So
well, they get the unedited version too.
It's true. It's true. Over on YouTube, Michael and I speak about Nicole Scherzinger and what she's been up to with Russell Brand's hat. We speak about Trump winning the election. We speak about the unfortunate Barbie doll wicked situation with a porn site. Well, that's a sentence. All of that is happening over at YouTube, so you can go over there if you want a little recent dose. But and do both. Listen now. Head over to YouTube. Please enjoy the behind the scenes and what went into the making of Outgrown.
Extra.
It's Emsolation Extra.
Hello, lovelies. It's Benjamin, the executive producer from Emsolation, and we are welcoming you to a very special treat that we've been working on behind the scenes for Em without her having any idea it was actually happening. So this is part one of a special look behind the scenes on the creation of Em's brilliant Outgrown tour. These are audio-only episodes, so there's nothing to see here, just a listen-only treat. We'll be bringing together some of the incredibly talented and lovely peeps who helped Em realise her dreams for the Outgrown tour. And in this first episode, we're going to be chatting with the show's director, Anna, and tour manager and the woman inside menopausia, Lucy. Enjoy. I kind of want to start this just by saying that rather than sitting in Em and Michael's chairs, my first guest, Anna Piper Scott, who's the director of Outgrown, we've both decided to just sit at the table where I sit when we record the show because we don't feel worthy of the plush chairs and the set.
No, we said it felt like sneaking in and sitting on the Queen's throne or something like that.
And I already feel like I'm sneaking in because I should, for the audience, just reiterate that Em has no idea what I'm doing. I've told her I'm doing a surprise project. She is taking a 2-week holiday. First 2 weeks of September, and the second week we needed something for the Thursday, and I'd been umming and ahhing on this idea, thinking we should do something like this because there's so many beautiful creative people that came in to work on Outgrown. I get to sit in this office and watch them all interact with Em for the months and the lead up, and I feel like it's a waste not to bring these people in and find out about their experience and get the lowdown. So,
this is like the director's commentary, DVD special feature.
And you are the director, so we should get the director in to do her commentary.
Yeah.
So I'd love to start with just what is your career? Like what do you do for the uninitiated? Who is Anna Piper Scott?
What I do is a hard question. At the moment, I'm unemployed, so anyone who wants to hire me to do anything, please. I need money. But
Can relate.
Broadly, I started doing comedy just over a decade ago in Perth.
Right.
Yeah, which is a great place to do stand-up comedy because everyone in the audience there, they just want jokes. They don't want whimsical stories.
Judith Lucy started in Perth.
Yeah, it's just a pub audience that's paid $5 and expects their money's worth. It's just like punchline. And then after doing that for a while, I realised that I was trans and I transitioned and realised that Perth, while being a decent place to do comedy, is a terrible place to be queer sometimes.
Yes, I remember.
So
I was there for 7 years.
Then I moved here to Melbourne and then, the career went pretty well, I think, all things considered. I won some awards and, got to go to the Edinburgh Fringe last year on someone else's money, which was quite nice.
I love that.
And for all that, I met Em when I was doing a comedy debate at the Victorian Pride Centre.
Okay, so one of the questions was, how did you first make contact with Em? So that was where it was.
Yeah, so it was a really great gig for me. It was a horrible gig for Em because...
So?
Because Em had to compete with a failing tech system. They'd been glitching mics throughout the show.
Oh,
which
that's
was not,
a nightmare.
But then they decided to all crap out and she had to try and do stuff a cappella. I didn't get to see any of this because I was backstage writing the rebuttal.
Comfort.
But and then and part of my set was me telling people that they should hire me, like I've just done at the start of this podcast.
Well,
and
if you're not hustling, you're going to miss out.
And then about a year later, got in contact asking if I wanted to direct her show, and I obviously said yes straight away.
Yeah, so you've obviously directed shows before.
I've done a bit of directing. I did a play.
Right.
Which I was writing and stuff like that. I've done kind of consulting with people on stuff. Sensitivity reading I've done before.
So can I ask, for the uninitiated, I mean, I've done a little bit of media, but no real... all the acting I did was in high school. What does a director do when they're called in to work on, say, something like Outgrown?
It's really different than I think what most people would think of a director being on another show, because a director in film is the head honcho. They're the one with the vision. They're the ones in charge of everything. A director in a stage play is in charge of everything, maybe subservient to the writer's vision.
Yep.
But a director on this kind of show is Em can't direct herself.
Yeah.
But it is Em's voice. It is Em's autobiographical story. So I can't impose a vision upon that. I can just hear what her vision is and then try and shepherd that whilst she can't.
Yeah.
Is the best way to describe it.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I'm ideally there'd be two M's and Em would be directing herself and Em would be able to watch herself and go, oh, I don't like how that sounds, or I need another punchline there or anything like that. So I have to be kind of a proxy for Em and also kind of a proxy for the audience.
Yeah, right.
While we're running through the script and stuff like that, going oh, we've got something here and that's going to be confusing to the audience, or you aren't letting them sit in this emotion for long enough.
I do remember at one stage you were directing her that she's just referring to her husband, Scott, and most people may not know who Scott is. So even little things like that you pick up on.
Yeah, just kind of, wanting her to remember that even if most of the people at the show are longtime fans of hers who've been listening to the podcast or whatever, not everyone has.
Yeah.
Some people just don't listen to podcasts. Some might have just, be there because they're a partner that has been brought along, or a best friend or something like that. Like, you got to see Em, come with me. She's my favorite comedian. And you want those people to feel included as well, especially considering like one of the big themes of the show is about feeling excluded.
Yeah.
And you don't want people to come to a show like that and feel excluded from the inclusion show. Like,
You failed. And so once she's approached you, does she just hand you over her script and say, can you have a read? And then how does it all work? Give me the lowdown.
I mean, the thing with a process like this is if for anyone I'd be directing, I'm going to be asking them what they want, what they need, what their goals are, what their vision of the show is like, and then we kind of work from there. Kind of like, okay, what is the best way to achieve that? So that's the first conversation that we had, was kind of like a bit of a kind of breakdown of the show, and she felt the best way to kind of like explain what the show was to send her first draft.
Yep.
And to send Rage and Rainbows, her last show.
Yes.
So that I can kind of get like a bit of a sense of what that show was, because, every kind of comedian is different in a small section at a charity gig or whatever, or a comedy night, as opposed to doing a whole hour
show,
or a whole hour and a half. Like, that's always going to be a longer, different, more experimental, more interesting thing. Which is why if you've only ever been to comedy shows, the lineup shows, you haven't seen like the full extent of what stand-up comedy can do.
Yeah, there's so many options, isn't there?
Yeah. So that was what the process started with, was kind of, and even then, before I started like making suggestions on like, cut this, expand on this or whatever, it's just kind of like, what's the goal of the show? Because when we had the first draft, there were just kind of, like 7 different ideas that didn't kind of all like fit together comfortably, and it's kind of like, okay, well, how much of this do we want to include? What's the important stuff? I don't want to go like, let's cut out all this stuff about autism, when you're like, no, the show's about being autistic, and part of it was, just also kind of like having questions with her about, what she wants people to feel during the show.
Yeah, right.
Because that's, I think, the really hard thing, I think, for a lot of comedians to wrap their head around is the goal isn't to just be funny.
Yeah.
Funny isn't enough.
Maybe if you're a straight white male, that's all it is.
But I think people I know who've been to see straight white men do comedy will say, even if the jokes aren't offensive or problematic or misogynistic or homophobic or whatever the normal things are, that they kind of have a bit of an endurance problem. That they get to the like 50-minute mark and they start checking their watch, because it's just eating the same flavor for too long.
Yeah,
It's not a whole meal. Yeah. And you need that kind of light and shade,
Yeah.
And it's even just kind of like going like, are we just joking too much about the same thing?
Right.
Which is why like one of the later passes that we did on the script was including more stuff about her family, because it'd gotten too abstract.
Right.
And we needed kind of like more personal stuff, because if all your jokes are about like abstract ideas around like, autism and neurodivergence and your emotional interior life, you kind of lose that like grounded connection to the real world. And but then if it's all just like personal stuff, it just feels a bit kitchen sink for a whole hour.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, it's such a balancing act.
Yeah. And that's the thing, it's just kind of like making, and part of it was just kind of like that was already there, of just going, she had the song Say Next, which I think is for a lot of people a highlight of the show.
Yeah.
Big emotional number about her having been open about her autism diagnosis, facing unexpected backlash and wishing she could take it back.
Yeah.
And one of the big things I had to tell her was just kind of like, you're going to want to make a joke straight away after this, because you've been sincere for so long and you're a comedian and you hate that. Like not like if you don't hear people laughing, you're like, I fucked up, I failed, I need to get out of this, I need to like get back to the laughter because the laughter feels safe and makes comfortable.
Yeah.
But I'm like, if you make a joke immediately after the song, they're gonna feel like their emotional investment was bullshit.
Yeah, right.
You
Oh
know?
my God, that's so interesting.
So I'm like, you can make a joke. You can make a joke even like 10 seconds after the song, but it just can't be like immediately. You just have
that moment.
You have to sit in it for a moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's like one of the things that people wouldn't expect a comedy director to tell people is don't make a joke.
Yeah, but that's exactly the reason why you need a director, I suppose.
Because the other thing is my job is to look at the whole.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard when you're performing a show, writing a show, especially one about your own life, to see the big picture.
Yep.
So you're like, oh, I right now want to make a joke. It's like, okay, that joke's going to land and get a big laugh, but it's going to undermine their emotional investment in anything else you say afterwards.
Yeah, right.
So that joke isn't worth it in the big picture.
Yeah.
It might be the funniest punchline you could write. It might be the biggest laugh of the entire show, but if it undermines the whole, it's not worth it.
Yeah, completely. And the other thing that I find really interesting about this show is I've seen so many of M's stand-up shows. There is a rough format, but she loves to ad-lib and work in the moment. And this was probably the first time she actually had a definitive script and wanted to stick to it beginning to end. Obviously she acknowledged it at the Palais show to you in the audience that she was going off script. But yeah, was it a challenge to keep her on script when she loves to ad-lib and free flow?
I didn't ever want to have the feeling of keeping her on script.
Yeah, understandable.
Because that is something I've always noticed with comedians when they first start doing comedy. I ran an open mic night in Perth for about 5 years. And it was a real distinct trend of you would get men coming in who had not rehearsed or even said their jokes out loud once to anyone and just bombed because of that. And then you would get a lot of women, and especially you'd get a lot of autistic people as well doing the same thing, of coming in over-scripted. And they'd rehearse the script so much that it felt like a performed monologue and it didn't feel like an authentic human experience.
Yeah, right.
And the whole magic trick of stand-up comedy is making it feel like everything you've just said for the first time.
Yep.
And M is I think phenomenal at that. I don't think anyone who was outside of the meetings we had would be able to point to the show and go,
no,
that was scripted, that wasn't scripted,
Yeah.
And there was even moments during the show where I was like, oh, you've used the setup that we wrote, but you've changed the punchline to be more contextually appropriate. And I think that's something that, because one of the reasons that Em brought me on was she knew that I was autistic and ADHD. And obviously the show's about her being autistic and having ADHD. And the autistic part of you wants the structure of a through line and a format and kind of like knowing where the show's going. And the ADHD part of you gets bored with the script really quickly.
Yeah, I bet.
Of going like, oh my God, I have to tell the same joke again. I just told it last night. This sucks. And part of the workflow was kind of finding like, I need you to hit this moment to get what you want out of the show. You need to make sure you say this line as scripted. This bit can be whatever.
Yeah, right.
Like the script isn't ever the show. The script is the blueprint for the show.
Yeah.
And the show is the show. The show is performing it. And you on stage will know much more what you want to say. But if you've rehearsed it, then you have somewhere to go.
Yeah,
you have someone
there's
to come
a comfort
back
in
to,
that.
And that's a part of the show is kind of like giving. Part of the process of directing the show is giving Em that freedom to do what she does so wonderfully and improvise and riff and have fun, and also give her the structure that she can come back to, so it's not just improv.
Yeah, yeah. And let's talk about rehearsals, because as a director, I know we did a run through probably about, I think it was a week before the first show started, but you never actually got to see the actual show with all the lights and whistles and bells until the final show at the Palais. I mean, we still have the December 7 arena show. But what was it like to watch a rehearsal, let her go off and tour the country, and then finally sit down and see the completed tour at the Palais the other week?
I hated it. No, I wanted to be there every night.
Yeah.
It was really frustrating.
Torture.
There was a part of me that kind of wanted to insist on just an audio recording.
Yep.
Or like, can you put like an iPhone at the back of the room? Can you film it? Can you send me something?
Just so I can direct.
But I just like, that's not my job, like,
Yeah.
again, like that's me reminding myself that like, I'm not in charge of this show.
Yeah.
Of like, it's like if I was like a fitness coach or something like that, like if you feel like you're good enough to run this marathon without me, then my job's over. Like you don't need me to come and keep giving you like notes on your form and your posture and whatever. Like, my job is to get you to the point that you can do it without me.
Yep.
And if you've reached that point, then I've got to my goal quicker than I wanted to maybe.
That's so good.
But I was glad that I finally got to see it at the Palais and see it with 3,000 people.
What an experience as well.
Yeah, and there is a thrill to kind of, because the feedback I'd gotten from M, like over Instagram and messages and whatever was, show's going great, I'm really happy.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't very detailed. And I was there going, no, but how did that moment land? You know, like that joke that we struggled with, finding the right thing for, like the joke that she made about Sonia Kruger.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
We went for like 5 different versions trying to find like the right joke, and I'd do a pass, she'd do a pass, I'd do a pass, and she hadn't done that one. I'm like, it's really good, and she's like, I don't know if it's too mean. I'm like, I don't think it's too mean. I think it's going to land. I think everyone's going to really love it. And then getting to hear it in front of 3,000 people and kind of like see her like succeeding with a joke that she wrote, but also a joke that I'd like told her was right for the show.
Yeah.
It was a very like particular kind of thrill.
Yeah, because there is also that whole nervousness about, will this offend people? Am I being funny or am I being just spiteful? So yeah, it must be really rewarding to then see it happen on stage and go, yes, we read the audience. They will appreciate this and enjoy it.
Yeah, and just backing decisions on gut feeling and seeing them pay off. Because it's when I'm like doing that with my own shows of going like, I don't know if this has worked, but my gut feeling says it will, so I'm going to commit to it. I'm on stage, so I have to experience it if it fails. Doing that with someone else, you know, and then like there's like a lot of anxiety, like watching the show of like, I've really told her this moment is going to work and it's in front of 3,000 people. And if it doesn't work in front of 3,000 people, she's going to feel horrible and I'm going to feel bad for putting her in that situation.
I'm going to know as well, yeah.
But, maybe she had those moments on the other 14 shows.
We didn't get to experience
and
that.
I got to see the version with all my failures cut out of it.
Yeah. Well, and she also gave you a lovely mention during the show as well, which I really loved.
Yes. I think she does fantastic work. She named everyone in the show who helped her out. And I think a lot of other people in her position would just be quite happy to kind of like take the praise. Yeah. And I've seen other performers where they perform with like a full band or whatever, and they'll name the band, but they won't name anyone else. And I'm, in the industry, I'm like, I know this person did this on the show. I know that person did that on the show, and you didn't give them a name check and you didn't give them the boost. And I feel like I've even noticed her, even since then or before the show started, talking to other people about Anna Piper Scott has been so great. It's been so helpful to have her work on the show and actually suggesting you for work. So that kind of, you won't know that unless the work comes through, but just seeing the impact of someone like you being so celebrated, I just love that all your hard work is rewarded by her acknowledging it and sharing it with other people, other creatives as well. Oh, that's really, really lovely. I didn't know she was doing that until right now. Of course, she's so generous in that regard. She's always, in all the time I've known her, been really, really conscious of anyone that she works with, supporting them, paying them and promoting them if need be, and trying to get them other work, because I think she's so appreciative of people stepping in and working with her, because she's had such a rough ride with people being assholes. Well, I mean, I think that was one of the biggest green flags when I came in to work on the show. I came here to the studio, and I think you were there that day. Lucy was there. Zeke, who's the band leader, amongst 5,000 other jobs that he does.
He's coming on later.
But everyone was just kind of like, oh, Ben's been working with me for this many years. Lucy's been working with me for this many years. And like, I'm the only person here who's like new.
Yeah.
Everyone else has been here a long time.
Yeah.
So if I get this right, I'm clearly going to be like part of the family for a very long time.
100%.
So that was like a green flag because, yeah, I think a lot of other people are like, yeah, this person's new as well. This person's just joining the team. It was like, oh, there's a lot of turnover here. Okay, cool. Good to know.
Yeah, that is a red flag. Yeah, and the loyalty, I think, is such a rare thing in media circles that people kind of step over people to get the big gigs. So it's so nice to see someone that's so inclusive and helpful and supportive.
Yeah, and I think especially the kind of role that I have, it's changing as a trend, but a lot of people get embarrassed about having people help write the jokes or help direct the show or anything like that.
Yeah.
They might put director behind the poster sometimes, but apart from that, they'll kind of keep pretty quiet about it.
Yeah.
And just be like, I wrote all the jokes, it's all me. And are too kind of egotistical to kind of like go, no, these other people contributed stuff and wrote on the show. And
I think, if you're not willing to do that, then you're a fucking asshole.
and I think so a lot of people will watch, even TV shows like, Stephen Colbert or something like that, or John Oliver, and think that that's the person who wrote all the jokes.
No.
Like, because he's saying all the jokes, that means he wrote all the jokes.
Yeah.
And, it's very nice to have kind of like not have that ego about it.
And I know, part of what she references in the show is the person that was dismissive of her actually accused her of not writing her own jokes and having people write them for her, which has never been the case. She's always been able to write her own shows and her own jokes, but she is 100% about collaboration and can you help me make this better, which I think is just a true professional.
Well, the thing is even though there's like parts of the script that I kind of like I did a pass on, or I kind of like wrote a first draft of what I think it should look like, there's nothing in the show that doesn't have her fingerprints all over it.
Yeah.
Because I would make a pop culture reference, which like that's not the reference for me. I would never bring up Sonia Kruger.
Why?
I think one of the versions of that joke was, instead of Sonia Kruger for TV Week Logies, it was a twink before Pride. She's like, I can't say that joke. That's not me. That's a joke you can say. That's not a joke I can say. And there's so many different versions of that throughout the script, and everything has kind of like been rewritten by her in one shape or another.
Yeah.
It's just my only kind of like role is like writing the script was kind of like to either like shorten a joke to make it punchier, or changing a word to make it kind of like a bit spicier or sassier or whatever.
Yeah.
Or writing a first pass of an idea of something and then her rewriting that to make it sound like something she would say.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyone who thinks that she doesn't write her own jokes is insane.
Yeah, agreed.
I can bring up the first draft and compare it to what's on stage, and I think 80% of what's in there originated from her.
Yeah.
And the other 20% has been rewritten by her.
Oh, it's such a brilliant show. What was it like to go backstage afterwards? Obviously, Em would have been exhausted. I remember giving her a hug and then just bailing because it's like, there's too many people I can't deal. But how did it feel for you to sort of have witnessed the whole show and then go and just go, you did good, kid?
I was so torn backstage because there's part of me that wants to be, I haven't seen her in 2 weeks. She's been doing the show. I finally got to see it and want to be like, oh my God, it was fantastic. I love it. I'm so proud of you. And then the other part of me is like, you have performed for 2 hours.
Leave the woman alone.
You're an autistic person who is clearly getting burnt out. No one else, despite watching the show, is paying attention to that.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like
so true.
And I was trying to be like, I'm really proud of you, but we can have this moment later. Like, I want this moment now.
Yeah.
You don't need it to be now.
Beautiful.
We can have a bigger, longer conversation about how well she did, or she can listen to me say it on a podcast
Well,
which I
this will
think
help as well.
This is also probably a better way for Em to be hearing it because it means that she doesn't have to worry about how she's reacting and what social cue
Exactly.
she's missing or not missing.
She can just sit in her bedroom with her noise-cancelling headphones on and listen in private.
Assuming that you're listening to this, you smashed it and I couldn't be prouder of it. And it is one of the best comedy shows I've seen in over a decade of doing comedy.
Well, I think that's the perfect way to end. Anna Piper-Scott, thank you so much for joining me.
It was a pleasure to be here, Ben.
Perfection. Oh, I loved that. I didn't even look at my questions.
Is there any?
I
Do you
don't know
want
if
to
there's...
just run past and see if you want to pick up anything?
Well, there weren't any dramas or freak-out moments during the tour or anything. You wouldn't have had to deal with the
Not
set
for
going
me.
missing. Yeah,
The set went missing. I didn't deal with that.
that's all for Lucy and
The dragon
Drake.
went missing. I didn't deal with that. You know, there was part of me that was worried that there was going to be an email after the first show of like, none of it worked.
Oh my
messed
God.
up.
Did you
fired.
really have that?
You know, there's always like a 1% chance that, you know, you've forgotten everything you know about comedy and all the talent you've built up over years has disappeared.
You're fine, Anna. You're fine. The only other thing I've got here is what's something people probably don't know about working with them that you really valued or appreciated?
I think the biggest thing that people know is Em, I think, like on the podcast and in her show persona, presents as a bit of a diva, a bit of a kind of, you know, it's all me, and it is the opposite of that the entire time. I think it's the only part of her show persona that feels like a put on.
Yeah.
You know, like it's all like leopard print and gold and fancy, you know, and I'm the queen and everything like that. And she's not like no part of her ever flexed any kind of like, I've been doing this for 20 years more than you know, no, you know, authoritarian kind of diva streak, you know, no like, who the fuck are you to give me feedback, or, you know, very quickly would check me anytime when like, you know, would say criticism and anything, but the most like blunt, direct way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
like just give it to me, just tell it to me straight.
It was beautiful to watch the two of you interact in the office, even though I didn't see a lot of it, but it was so nice just watching you both work on things.
Yeah, just a complete lack of ego.
Yeah. Well, Anna, thank you again.
Thank you.
The reviews for M. Rossiano's groundbreaking Outgrown show are in. Express Mag said, Rossiano is a comedic force to be reckoned with. Anya Marcus wrote, this show is an honest blend of raw emotion, biting humour and a celebration of growth. Don't miss your final chance to see M. Rossiano's Outgrown. One show only, Saturday, December 7, Margaret Court Arena. Go to frontiertouring.com/M. Rossiano. Okay, our next guest is the divine Lucy Gransbury. Hello! We've known each other for a while, so...
Yay, we're giggling already.
Yeah. We were both together in the period of Today FM Breakfast,
Yes,
so we've
the
been
deepest,
there,
darkest days
done
of
that.
breakfast radio, yes.
Man.
Good times.
All right, well, let's start with you and Em. When did you first meet Em? How did all that happen?
Well, I wrote for Mamma Mia after Em did. Did you
I
not
didn't know that.
Surprise. In about 2014 or so, I was writing for Mamma Mia. Em may have forgotten this. I actually interviewed her at one point, which was very exciting for me.
What?
Yes, and because I also remembered her from Australian Idol days, especially when she brought in the trend of wearing one long earring.
Oh.
I may be the only person in Australia that remembers that trend.
Oh my God,
but
I
it was
love
all
that.
Em Rossiano, and for my 16th birthday, a friend gave me one long earring and one short one because that was the trend that Em had started. Anyway, so I interviewed her. That was for, she was on one of Michael Lucas's shows and was doing PR. But then a couple of years later, a colleague introduced us both when Em needed someone to do something in my skill set, which is sort of like script punching up.
Yeah, right.
And it was for a series of ads that she was doing. I honestly can't remember.
Can't even remember what they are.
No, really. And I was just like looking at the script and throwing in a few jokes and stuff. And Em, she said to me, I remember she said, "You write me better than I write me," which is a very high and unnecessary compliment. But we've got a similar mindset in writing that way. And so ever since then, when she was doing scripts, she'd have me just do a bit of an edit or anything. And it's all her always, 100%. But I was often formatting what her thoughts are, or just, punching in a few jokes here and there or anything like that.
I've done this before as well.
Yeah. But it's all her all the time. And so we did that, and then she did the Try Hard tour. I didn't tour, but I helped in the script creating process with her. And then she needed a PA when she started on Breakfast Radio again.
That's right.
She knows that I'm organised.
And that's when I first met you, I reckon.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that would have been around 2017-ish, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And so I started PAing for her, and that went for a few years up until and as well as in that we were doing tours and stuff. And so during tour time, my job would increase to whatever it needed to be for her for the tour.
Yep.
And then COVID hit and I had babies. And so for the last few years, I haven't worked for her as much, but whenever big projects come up, she's seen if I'm available. And this time it just worked out very well.
Yeah.
Yes.
The one thing I have forgotten is, and I started this with Anna, is talk to me about your career creatively. Like, what do you do currently?
That's a very good
You're
question.
a Jackie of all trades.
Or a master of none. So my degree was in musical theatre.
Oh.
Yes, back in the day. I'm an actor by trade, but mostly I'm kind of, auditioning for ads is a big part of my job. Writing. I do stand-up comedy myself, cabaret comedy, but not nearly as often as someone who would call themselves a comedian. I do, like a yearly Fringe show or something like that.
Yeah, but you really successful Fringe show. The reviews were fantastic.
Oh, bless your heart, Ben.
I remember.
But mostly I love my DIY projects at home.
Can I just say,
that's my real jam.
If you're not following Lucy on Instagram and watching her DIY projects, they're so bloody cute.
Oh, bless. But do not learn anything from me because I almost took my eye out with a crowbar one time. So.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah, you're very much a suck it and see kind of renovator.
Yeah, very much. Can't really be bothered doing the research. Yeah.
Why should you?
No.
It's allowed for everyone.
Yeah, part's boring.
Okay, so being available for this show, when you got the call, what did Em sort of say to you Outgrown?
Yeah, well, it was actually quite late that I came on board. It was around April. And the show had already been announced, like the dates had been announced. Tickets weren't quite on sale yet, I don't think. But it was just all of a sudden Em needed a tour manager, and I think I'd commented on the her Instagram post, like, can't wait to you've had a penis puppet, we've had dancing vulvas, can't wait to see what you come up with next. And she messaged me, she's like, "Are you available for these dates?" And it just so happened that I completely was. I'm also a wedding celebrant, so often weekends are booked out far in advance. But this was a quiet period in which those, I think 5 weekends, I was completely free. So it worked really well. And I can't actually remember what the original question was. What was that answering?
I think you've answered it.
We got there.
I'm sitting here going, what was the original question?
Forgotten. She called me to do this tour, and when she explained it, it was, I can't even, it was like, it's exactly what she said. It's like a multi-sensory experience of definitely of her ADHD, autism diagnosis, of perimenopause, of her life since Rainbows, really. And I was like, you don't need to sell me on a thing. I'm in.
Yeah.
And she also said to me on day one, "And I need you to play a giant dragon called Menopausia." I was like, of course you do. Okay, sure.
We need to talk about Menopausia because for those who don't know, if you've seen the show, you actually get a thank you in it anyway.
I do. Yes.
Because
she's very generous.
The dragon originally wasn't in the show, and I'll talk more about this with Zeke, but the original conversation was this tour is just going to be Em and a microphone. Yeah. And if you've seen the show, it is not just Em and a microphone.
No.
And the dragon actually, I think the whole script was written or...
When I came on board, certainly the script was, I'd say about 80% done.
Yeah.
It was... After that, Anna came in, and then Emma and Anna workshopped it and just shaped it into the glory that it is today.
Yeah.
But I think menopausia was already in there because Em said it to me almost straight away. So
Yeah, maybe, I don't know if the actual puppet was there. It was more just talking about the concept. And then I do distinctly remember the day in the office where Em said, we need to get a costume designer and see if we can. I think Zeke had a slight heart attack because asking to get a costume made, I feel like we were 6 to 8 weeks out from the show.
Yeah, well, it must have been a little bit early because when I came on, the costume was already being made because it had been done on Em's measurements.
Right.
And Em generously had thought that she and I are roughly the same size.
Bless.
And then when I put it on, it was literally splitting seams putting this costume on. And also I am pregnant. So, that has contributed to needing to take the costume out a little bit. But height-wise, it was fine. But Gabe, the costume designer, very kindly did let it out in plenty of places for me so that I could actually breathe.
Yeah. And so behind the scenes, like before the tour, you were doing lots of organisation work and running around. What's it like moving from the before the tour to the actual tour?
So my official role this tour was tour manager, which is a step up from what I've done before. Normally I've just been kind of, Em's right-hand woman and done what she needs. But this time I was actually working through logistics of touring the band and getting everyone to where they needed to be. Zeke was the main brains behind the operation. I was just there to support him and swan in on Tuesdays when I felt like
what do you need done, Dolph?
what email can I send today? But the logistics working up to it were it's a lot of back and forth between Frontier, the touring company, between the company that does all the bookings, what we want, what Em wants, everything, and then putting all of that together. And then as we start to get closer, there's kind of this feeling of, oh my God, I can't believe the show's coming up in only a few weeks, but also let's do this. We're so ready. Like we've thought through everything we possibly could. Everything else we're going to need to start learning on the fly because there's nothing else that we can sit down and plan. We just need to be feeling it out at this point.
Yeah. And so the first show, what's it like being a part of a touring company and getting the first show out like in Queensland that first weekend?
It was a relief. It was the first show was Toowoomba, which not sold as well as we would have liked.
Yeah,
but also was is a lovely. I've been to Toowoomba several times and I really like it. And it was a lovely first show. And also, so during the show, I sit side stage as well as be menopausia. My most important role is sitting side stage with a microphone into Em's ear. And I've got her script in front of me and I'm just helping her for when she does her wild, incredible improv, which she does every show throughout.
It's always different.
Always different. I'm there helping her get back on script, which she could definitely do herself, but it's just the way that we keep it the tightest and running to what she wants it to be running.
Yeah.
And for Toowoomba, we weren't sure how much she was going to have memorised or, what role nerves would play and everything.
Yeah.
So I was there ready to prompt her, but as usual, she just went completely off cuff. It was absolutely brilliant and I just sat there laughing in her ear for most of the show.
I think also, I do distinctly remember before the tour that we never factored in how long it takes for people to laugh.
Exactly.
And you've got to leave space for people to laugh.
Yeah.
And so the shows in the early stage were running really late, weren't they? Because we never factored in, well, it's a 90-minute show and how many laughs will there be and how long will they go? And
exactly. It was, I think Em was adamant that it was going to be a 90-minute show and I said, I will believe that when I see it.
Yeah.
At no point did it go for 90 minutes, but definitely laughter played a point, applause did as well, and as well as just everything that she comes up with on the spot. And there's not a single show where she's completely on script because she is riffing off of, things that are happening in that town, what's happened in her day, everything, and it's always exciting. Dave in the audience. It's always different. And I also, side stage on the computer, I write down any jokes that she's done in that show and we see if we can keep them going for the next show and anything that's really worked as well.
I didn't know you're doing that as well.
For the ones that are like a massive hit, then we keep it in. And she keeps it all in her mind anyway, but I just make notes for, that so we can bring them up when we need to.
And so paint the image of what you look like side of stage because you are menopausia, as we've already said. So you've got your headphones on talking to Em, but you are in the outfit as well, aren't you?
Yeah, so normally I'd be side stage in like theatre blacks and, you know, probably a merch T-shirt. But for this show, I'm in the full dragon costume, but without the head.
Right.
And without the hands so that I can still use my computer. And
feet are on though?
Sorry?
Have you got the feet on?
Feet on.
Right.
And the wings in, which makes it quite hard to see.
Wings are in.
And then during the song Communication, I would jump up, put the head on, which is quite elaborate because it does plug in somewhere because the eyes light up. So it has to plug into further down the suit. And then slip the hands on. And then I would lift the head up so it was kind of perching on my head like a headpiece so that I could continue to prompt if needed up until when I walked on stage. So then I would slam the head down and do my part.
Get out there.
Come off. And then I would take off the head and hands and feet and wings as quickly as possible and come back on mic and I'd be like this, ready to prompt in for the next bit. But, you know, she took it very well.
Oh my God, I fucking love that.
It's so fun.
And what about being in that suit and on stage? How much are you seeing and how difficult is it? Because you actually do a lot of walking around stage.
Almost nothing. And it's you know, on stage you've got bright lights ahead but black underneath you. And so we learned very quickly that we had to tape the steps that I was stepping on and stuff with bright tape so that I could see where to go.
Yeah.
At no point did I fall over, but I came very close one show and I remember Sean and Liv kind of like jumped out of their seats ready to help me because they thought I was going to tumble. But I can't see the flowers around me or anything and my wings are taking them out and yeah, the visibility is low. And then in the Palais show, we added smoke out of nowhere, which I'd forgotten about, and then I couldn't see the tape. So I was like, look, I might be walking on an audience member here. This is pure luck.
Yeah, see, props to you because that is not – you had to up steps, go behind her, then head back out on stage. There was a lot of hip thrusting.
There was a lot of hip thrusting. It was, you know, we kind of it kind of evolved as we went along into it went from a serious dragon into being very silly. But and then afterwards, Em would, you know, break the – I don't even know if it's fourth wall anymore. It's fifth wall, sixth wall, I don't know. But, you know, mentioning that – this is Lucy and she's pregnant because that was ironic in itself that menopause was pregnant. And then from then on it got very relaxed. And then later in the show I come out in the costume with the head off anyway when Em starts painting her face. So,
no fly.
No fly. I don't want to give anything away. But
no, I know. I feel like everyone's seen it, but so many people have not seen it.
Yes.
And we still have the arena show to do.
Oh, goodness, and you must be there.
Yeah,
it's glorious.
Which, again, it will be a totally different show. Now, the one thing we need to talk to you about, and I'll be doing this with Zeke as well, is the time when the set went missing.
Ballarat. Ballarat. Now, I love
trucker.
Ballarat because that's where I went to uni.
All right.
And Zeke and I had this, you know, this excitement about Ballarat because we'd come off 3 weekends of travelling. Ballarat is Victorian town. We were like, all we have to do is rock up and just do the show and then go home. It's going to be so easy. And then...
So when did you find out it wasn't going to arrive on time?
It was the timeline's a little bit sketchy in my head, but I think it was a Saturday show, and maybe on the Thursday, Zeke said to me, "There is an increasingly real possibility that the freight isn't going to arrive when it should," because I think it was supposed to already have been there.
Yeah, right.
And he had been chasing it up, and the company was hopeless and not giving any straight answers. So he said, "Can we just start looking into a backup plan of things that we can put in place?" So I started looking into things like sets and, you know, somewhere we could get flowers and a dragon, and I'll come back to the dragon, and things like that. And then on the Friday morning, when it definitely should have been there by then, Zeke was like, yeah, we need to action this backup plan. And so we spoke to Em. She took it remarkably well.
Yeah, because things like that, if you can fix it behind the scenes without Em knowing, you want the word is the talent to not have to stress.
Yeah, and we didn't want her to stress, but we also, we certainly, because, you know, actioning the backup plan, the really unfair thing was that it cost Em money which she had already paid for this set that was just sitting God knows where. So
you had one job delivery guy.
One job. And so we also wanted, you know, her approval on everything that would happen. Plus, you know, she's the boss. She needs to know.
Yeah.
So we spoke to her. She took it really well. And mostly she wanted answers on where the stuff was, and unfortunately it was not something that we could find out because the company was infuriating. And we had high up people chasing it up for us. That the Em's community, as always, rallied together to try and help us. But mostly Zeke and I were getting the pieces together to try and, have a show. So Kit was amazing. She's the set designer.
Yep.
She came through and made a paper version of all the hanging backdrops.
Yep.
Which when we travel them, they're big plastic ones that are quite durable, but she made paper cardboard ones that looked very similar and they were absolutely brilliant. She pulled 24-hour, brought her assistant in and did not stop working until midnight kind of thing.
The assistant got to come to the show at the Palais as our reward. But yeah, we will be talking to Kit to find out what it was like.
She's amazing.
Get that phone call.
And then I found flowers on Marketplace that looked similar enough to the ones that we had for the set. And so we booked those in. And then came the dragon.
Menopausia, yeah. What the fuck?
Estrogenia. So what happened, I was Googling to try and find things like dragon mascot Melbourne and, costume dragon Victoria and things like that. And I was only finding these terrible things that were a lot of the time they were children's costumes that wouldn't work and really cheap, crappy things or things that were going to cost $1,000 that, we didn't want to spend when we already had one.
Custom-made suit. Just give it to us.
Yeah, and even if we could spend it, they wouldn't get it ready in the time frame and things like that. But this photo kept coming up of these dragons at Cryall Castle, which is a venue in Ballarat, just outside of Ballarat. You drive past it when you're going to Melbourne. And I have a friend who works there who I went to uni with. I mean, she's worked there for so long. She's basically the queen of the castle. And so I took a screenshot of the dragon, sent it to her and said, is this dragon a full-time dragon at Cryall or is it like the Walking with Dinosaurs show that travels around? She was like, no, they're our dragons. And so I said, hey, well, perchance could we borrow one for a show in Ballarat on Saturday? And she's like, yep, what do you need? And she helped me sort it out. And so it was her and her partner, Lawrence, who I also know from uni, the most wonderful couple. They came, they operated the dragon, whose name was actually, Em called her Estrogenia, which was very funny. I think the name was actually Binder, something like that.
What?
Yes, sure.
Change it.
And it was amazing. They were so low key, but this dragon was huge. It was 4 meters long.
Yeah.
It was brilliant and had its own stand and things like that. It was crazy, but of course, the most important factor was that Em was the one who just managed to improv around it and come up with the idea of that this is Estrogenia. And at the beginning of the show, she said, the role of menopausia will be played by Estrogenia tonight. And it was so funny. It was so good. And then Estrogenia was just epic, was just huge and blowing out smoke.
You didn't have to wear that.
Lord, no. It was
God.
Lawrence was wearing it and Elise was side stage with me on opposite sides, ready to, catch as it came off because it had even less visibility than me. I think it operates via cameras through the suit. It was that big.
Holy shit.
But yeah, it was properly amazing. So it all came together in a very stressful and hectic way. But I think that's when Em's at her best as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Throw her a curveball and it's like, yes.
She knocks it out of the park every time and that's what we live to see. And I mean, it's hard for her that, I say, this is when you're at your best, when you're really down. But she really does, even with the Hobart show when she'd lost her voice, that show was phenomenal and she did not miss a note throughout it.
Wow.
But she just pulls it out of somewhere and just makes it even better.
Yeah. What do they call it? The red light, or when the red light goes on, she's just there.
She's there. She's there.
And so having been to every show, you'd get to experience all the different changes and ad-libs and little quirks that become part of the show as well.
I do, and it very much evolves as we go along. And I also, with prompting her side stage, I can tell when there's a bit that she's gotten bored of and that she's skipping that bit on purpose or it hasn't fit with her vibe tonight or anything like that. And so the way that her mind works when she's on stage is it's incredible to watch. And there was one show in, I'm going to say Wollongong because I can't pronounce the one that is like Tyrrell?
Thrall?
But we were saying
like
it wrong. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tyrrell, Squirrel, whatever it is.
Regional New South Wales.
In Wollongong, where there was a medical emergency in the audience.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, and she's okay. She really is okay. But the way she handled it was just my jaw was on the floor. She was brilliant. Firstly, she leapt off the stage like she was going to do CPR herself. Yeah. She rallied the crowd when they needed it and got them away so that the right people could be there helping this woman. And then she calmed everyone down while also acknowledging, the weight of the situation, and then completely changed the show around, flipped it on its head. She brought forward the moment of the confetti, the peaceful moment that she needed so that she could take a couple of moments on stage to regulate. And then she just kind of moved her way through the script so that it was flowing in a completely different way, but in a way that made sense for the mood that was in that room. Fuck. And it was brilliant. After that show, I was teary when I gave her a hug afterwards. I was like, you are the best at what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, she really is. And there's so much stuff that people don't get to hear about or know. I'm so glad we're doing this.
Me too.
All right, so what's something that people probably don't know about working with them that you really value or appreciate?
I mean, so much. I mean, the first thing is that she's an incredibly generous boss, which we all know. That touring with her, she puts us all up in these beautiful rooms. She takes care of us. And I do feel very lucky that she's the one that we're answering to, really. She's very generous with us, with her time, with her with the cost of everything that we do. She really takes care of the people that are working for her. But also that I think people don't expect how quiet she can be a lot of the time, that she's, especially the more she's learned to take what she needs.
Yeah.
That often we know that for Em to be at her best for the show, she needs to have a lot of quiet time during the day. Whether or not she goes off and does things herself, she certainly will do what energises her. But often before the show, we want her to be in her dressing room, just taking that time to herself and doing her makeup and everything, because that is it's time that she needs. She can't be loud and out there all the time. Yeah. She needs the time to recharge, and she does it so beautifully, and also lets the people around her do it as well. So often after the show, we'd be driving for a couple of hours, and she and I would be adrenalised and talking a million miles an hour, and then sometimes we'd have quiet time as well, and she would just switch off and kind of take the time that she needed, and I love that about working with her, that she's both extremes at the same time.
I think a lot of people don't realise how much work is involved in getting up on a stage and hosting a show like that.
I'm exhausted sitting side stage watching her, but she walks off, and it's become like a joke that she looks in, like, it's like she walks off and looks me in the eye and almost hits the deck. Like sometimes she genuinely lies down on the floor. She really does. She just throws herself on the floor. It is that exhausting, and she goes from 100 to 0 when she comes off.
Yeah.
And she's still, she's still giving of time and energy to the people around her. But by the time she's gone into her dressing room, undressed, taken off her makeup, packed up her stuff, she comes out and she's basically asleep by then, because she gives every inch of herself in those shows.
Yeah, she really does.
Yeah.
It's why it's so important that, like, I think there was a row of 3 shows, one after another, that would have killed her.
Yeah, that was, and we were traveling a lot between them as well, and that was
and
hard.
It's not just talking, the singing as well. Like,
exactly.
That must be a
But she was still at her best.
Oh
when
my
the
God.
chips it out.
Was she totally?
She pulls it out of somewhere.
I did feel sorry for her after the Palais show, because we all, there were so many of us wanting to go backstage and hang out and say congratulations. And I remember just giving her a hug and thinking, I'm leaving now, because I just don't want to add to the whole extra of everyone being around.
It was really fun though, that kind of little impromptu after party. But I know from working with her and touring with her for many years that, and she would say this herself, that she doesn't know after a show, especially a big one like Palais, she can't predict if she's going to be wildly energetic or completely on the floor.
Yeah.
We assume she's going to be exhausted, but every now and then she'll be like, all right, I want to, let's have a drink, let's go out dancing or something like that.
Yeah.
Not that we ever follow through, but the energy is there. And I think the Palais was perfect, that she got to see everyone, have a great time, but she's still, after that, she crashed pretty hard and was ready for bed.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that's pretty much it. Is there any final thoughts or words you'd love to say just to Em?
Oh,
This is your little moment to just get in her ear while she's in her noise cancelling headphones.
I'm the voice inside her head. Well, it is. It is ironic that during her shows, I am the voice inside her head, because I sit side stage and whisper into her ear.
That must be so comforting.
It is comforting, but from years of working with her, she is the voice inside mine. And and I love that, you know, she's I've called her, she's like my mum, sister, auntie, friend, boss. Like,
I love that.
Yeah, she's the best. I love working for her. And this show has been so special, and I'm just really grateful to have been a part of it.
I'm grateful for you coming in and adding all of this
I'm
to it.
grateful for you, Benny.
Thanks, Luce. Yay us.
Yay us.
Coming up in part 2 next week, we're going to chat to the man behind the music, Zeke. We'll also have costume designer Tamara and set designer and decorator Kit.
Installation Extra.
Give yourself the gift of Installation Extra for less than $2 a week and get 2 bonus episodes every week, close friends access on Instagram, pre-sales ticket priority and merch discounts. There's even exclusive video episodes each week on our Extra tier. Find out more at emsolation.supercast.com now. Emsolation with M. Rossiano is recorded at Down the Hill Studios, hosted by M. Rossiano with Michael Lucas, executive produced by Benjamin Worsley, produced by M. Rossiano, edited by Ezekiel Fan with videos by James Henderson, socials by Benjamin Worsley, M. Rossiano and Marcella Rossiano Barrow, with assistance from Jem Evans and Isabella Hines. You'll find links to get more Emsolation on Instagram at Emsolation Podcast. Thanks for listening, and we can't wait to chat with you again soon.